We're going to take a look at some terminology about hard drives primarily, local disks, so SSDs and hard drives. That doesn't cover all of the terminology, but at least gives us some groundwork that we can work from. Many of these terms are not well understood by people, so I think this is good groundwork to go on. First of all, we need to make a distinction between physical disks and logical disks. Right? So let's take a look at those actually on my disk manager. I'm going to open disk manager here, and you'll be able to see my drives when this thing opens. What you're looking at up here at the top are all of my logical disks. You can see several of them up here. When you look down here at the bottom of this thing, you see the physical disks on the left, and you see that they're numbered. So for example, they start with disk 0, disk 1, disk 2, disk 3. These are physical disks. And then over here on the right hand side, you'll see the logical disks. So you'll see that disk 0 is my D drive, and this has some characteristics to it. For example, this is a basic disk. Now when you see basic disk, the first thing you think about is that data cannot slop over from one disk to the next. I could turn this into a dynamic disk, and if I had more than one dynamic disk, I could have data actually slop over from one to the next and make two different physical disks look like one logical disk. They would actually appear as one disk to the device. In other words, I could make a D drive that had the size of two different physical disks. I would do that by going down to physical disk 0 here, right-clicking on it, and say convert to dynamic disk. Now once you've converted it, I can convert it and keep all of my data, but I cannot convert it back to a basic disk again without losing my data. So I'm not going to do that. Here you can see the size of this disk. So this is about a 4 terabyte disk. This has one partition on it. Now, I should say, to make it more clear here, one logical disk on it. Right? And it says basic disk partition. Disk 1 here also has one logical disk. It's about a 7, probably about an 8 terabyte disk here. Now, on disk 2 is actually my solid state drive, and it has my C drive on it, but you notice it actually has 3 different groups here. These are 3 different partitions or 3 different logical disks. And when you look up here, you see disk 2. There's the C drive, there's disk 2 partition 1, disk 2 partition 4. So notice as I click these things, see this one's kind of highlighted, and then I click this one and it highlighted. I click this one, it highlighted. Well, wait a minute, why does this say 4 when you only see 3 here? Well, there was probably another one here at one point that I deleted, and so it just kept the numbering. So this one actually has 3 different logical disks on the single physical disk. Now these don't all have drive letters. Just because it's a logical disk doesn't mean it has to have a drive letter. I could, for example, I could take this D drive here and I could shrink the volume, and that would create some space here and make another logical disk, and I could give it another drive letter. I'm not going to do that right now, but I certainly could do that very easily just by shrinking this volume. I would have to format it, and then I'd have to change the drive letter and give it a drive letter. This is the format, by the way. This is a NTFS formatted disk, which is New Technology File System, one of Microsoft's format systems. The rest of these are all single ones, I think. Disk 3, disk 4, disk 5. These are all 12 terabyte and a couple of 10 terabyte drives. And then these down here are DVD actually. This is a DVD. So I've got 3 DVD drives. I've got DVDs in 2 of them right now. All right, so that is the physical disks and logical disks. Now let's take a look at some other terminology here. So when we say disk drive, we're talking about a physical component with a disk interface connector and a power connector. So in other words, that physical disk. When I say volume, I'm talking about a logical unit of storage that can be formatted with a file system and may contain one or more. A disk drive can contain one or more volumes. Now, the thing about a volume is, let me go back here to my disk manager. If I were to make this, let's say I make disk 0 and disk 1, both dynamic disks, and then I made all of this look like, let's see, about 7 plus 3, so 10 terabytes. This would look like a single 10 terabyte volume, right? So, or I could divide this up into maybe a 2 terabyte volume and then a 6 terabyte volume that would go from about the middle of this to about the middle of this, and then another 2 terabyte volume. They're called volumes when they span, when they're capable of spanning from one disk to another. However, if they're basic and they are not capable of spanning, like these, then they're not called volumes, they're simply called partitions. Now I know that Microsoft uses the word partition here, and as a matter of fact, this is a partition because that's a basic disk. But even if you turned it into a dynamic disk, it would probably still use the word partition, just because they haven't caught up, and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and they probably haven't updated that word yet, as they've changed the technology over time. But it's a volume. If it's dynamic disks, these would be volumes. If they are basic disks, then they would be partitions. So partition and volume, these only occur on basic disks, and these occur on dynamic disks, even though that doesn't say that here. Dynamic disks. Formatting is laying down a file system. There aren't very many file systems that you can use on a Windows system. You can use a FAT or FAT32, FAT32. I'll just say F32. There is also an EXFAT. There is the NTFS. And then there's a newer one called RE, small e, FS, resilient file system, that is fairly new. However, you cannot put an operating system on REFS. You can use it for storage, but you can't use it for operating systems yet. We may be able to in the future. So formatting is that process of laying down that file system on that drive, or on that logical volume.